Well, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the diocese, to this webinar. And for those who don't know who I am, my name is Jonathan Triffitt, Director of Mission and Ministry and Deputy Diocesan Secretary for the diocese, and delighted to co-host this webinar tonight alongside Bishop Karen and Mandy Christopher. I'm sure Bishop Karen needs no introduction whatsoever, but Bishop Karen, you just want to say a quick hello, and then Mandy, I'll come to you to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really good to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you. And Mandy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mandy Christopher. I know some of you. In my substantive post, I'm the Assistant Director of the Board of Education, but I'm currently seconded with much excitement to the Diocesan Board of Finance as Head of Growing Faith.
It's great to have you on board, Mandy. And again, thank you to all of you for giving time this afternoon to join us on this, our first webinar around our new diocesan vision, which is to make Jesus Christ known in every place so that all might flourish and grow, seeking his kingdom here and now. And that together as a diocese, we have discerned that our primary vocation and calling is to make Jesus known. And so I'm just going to share my screen, and apologies, this is going to be on now for the majority of the webinar. Apologies for those who'd rather see faces, but hopefully the information on the slides will just help to settle thinking and stimulate further thought. So as I say, our diocesan vision is to make Jesus known. It's a vision that is underpinned by 5 strategic priorities, areas of mission and ministry that we believe are critical to growing God's kingdom so that all might flourish and grow through encountering the presence of God in Christ through the power of the Holy Spirit. And over the autumn term, there will be a number of webinars that will introduce each of these priorities. And it's worth noting right at the outset that this is an emerging conversation. We don't yet have all the details. We haven't yet fleshed out all the plans, all the aspirations. And that's partly because we're still in the early stages of working through the detail. We're still seeking to engage with local leaders, local communities, churches and schools. Because what we recognize is that this vision isn't just about what we do at the center of the diocese, but rather it's our desire to enable and empower the local church, and where appropriate, the school, to engage, shape, inform how we live out our vision in each and every place. And so today we are introducing the first strategic priority, creative partnerships in local mission. And underpinning that is a strong desire to build a culture of partnership across our shared working, our shared mission and ministry as we live out our vision to make Jesus known. This priority is an invitation to embark upon a journey and to consider how we live faithfully as missional disciples, serving the purposes of God in those places and communities in which we find ourselves. Creative partnerships in local mission is an invitation to ask the question, what does it mean to be the church here and now in this, your context? It's an opportunity to consider what more we might be able to accomplish through establishing missional partnerships and working creatively across traditional boundaries, pioneering new ways of being. And central to those missional partnerships is the place of children and young people, the place of our schools and our multi-academy trusts, and other key partners like the military, the cathedral, ecumenical bodies, and civic trusts. Creative partnerships in local mission is an invitation that involves faithful and courageous discovery and imagination, which celebrates the rich history of our traditions, our heritage and faith, whilst responding to the challenges and the opportunities of a changing society. It's about creating new stories, establishing new relationships, and creating new pathways and ways of being the body of Christ in those places where Christ would have us go, so that all might flourish and grow. And if time allows, at the end of this presentation, I will be inviting you to join into some breakout groups to explore a couple of questions, to think about where you are currently seeing and experiencing creative partnerships in local mission, lived out in your own context, but also to consider how this approach might create an environment for the local church and school to make Jesus known. So why is this important now? I'm going to hand over to Bishop Karen.
Thank you, Jonathan. This is a bit of a backward glance and then to look forward, because I think it's quite helpful for us to do some fact checking and to discover why this is one of our key emphases. So who are we now? Well, we know we are 459 parishes across the diocese, 582 churches, and there is around 43,500 children in our 194 Church of England schools, obviously many others in other schools. And we have other resources at our disposal. They are well known to us. 196 parochial clergy, we have assistant curates, licensed lay ministers, 83 LLMs with PTO, active still in ministry, 242 lay worship leaders, 578 lay pastoral assistants, 21 commissioned lay pioneers, and 381, I'm glad John Wood's here, retired clergy, importantly with PTO, offering us a significant resource. And that's a resource primarily which resources the church, the day-to-day ministry of the church. However, there is a huge challenge. Census data shows that we have a population across the diocese of over 1 million people. The latest electoral roll and average weekly attendance figures show that we're only connecting with a small percentage of them. And we need to hold this alongside those who say and have said in the last census that they are Christians. In Wiltshire and Dorset, the number who said that they are Christians was higher than the national average and was around 51 or 52%. And let's look more closely at the missing generations. And BCP here, if you're in Wiltshire, is not the Book of Common Prayer. It's Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole conurbation. So that does take in some of Winchester Diocese. But if we look at the missing generations, around 50% of our population is under 50 years old, with a significant percentage under 15 and between 15 and 19. And then looking at the average weekly attendance in our churches. In 2009, the average weekly attendance was 28,200. In 2021, it was 16,500. Well, they all come at Christmas, you might say. Well, in 2009, 89,200 came at Christmas. But in 2021, it was only half that number at 35,000. And in 2009, 4,200 children were in our churches. In 2021, that number had dropped to only 1,400. So if you were wondering at first why we need to reimagine our mission and ministry, well, you may realise that now.
Thank you, Bishop Karen. There were some stark facts and data. I just want to just hold that just for a second while some of those figures or what Bishop Karen has shared with us just settles. I don't know about you, but it's uncomfortable hearing and demonstrates the size of the task. But as we look to the future, I just wonder, what kind of church do you dream of? What might the church look like if we were to fully inhabit the space and the opportunity and the invitation to make Jesus known? Maybe you'd like to ponder that question. Those young people were talking about a vision of the church where everyone is welcome. A vision of the church that works for justice and takes seriously our responsibilities for the climate. A church that embraces diversity. A place where each person can find their place. A place where the church speaks in the public square. And like I say, we'll forward that link to you so you can then watch it in your own time. As I mentioned earlier, Creative Partnerships in Local Mission is an invitation to embark upon a journey and to consider how we live faithfully as missional disciples serving the purposes of God. At the heart of this invitation is the mission and ministry of the local church. And we give thanks to God for the extraordinary work that is happening across the diocese. Our approach to mission needs to be local, contextual, and deeply relational. And where that is already happening, we really want to give thanks to God and celebrate the fruit of those partnerships. But we also recognize the need to think differently in some areas and to reconsider how we organize ourselves locally, to share our resources, to raise vocations and equip disciples to confidently share their faith, stepping courageously into those places where the church is struggling to connect. Therefore, as part of our strategy...
Jonathan, we're not getting the slides. You just need to move it along because we've still got children on our screen.
Oh, that's interesting.
You might have to stop sharing and start again or something.
I think I will. But don't you just love technology on a Wednesday afternoon? Or Tuesday? Well, I don't even know what day it is anymore, to be honest. Let's try that one again. So in front of me, I've got a screen, Bishop Karen, that says Creative Partnerships in Local Mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I move to the one that's hopefully that says Pilot Missional Partnerships.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Apologies, everyone. We'll edit this out of the recording. So as I was saying, part of our strategy, we're going to develop a number of pilot missional partnerships across the diocese. And by pilot, we mean a designated group of churches and schools and missional agencies who will work together around developing a shared vision for mission. These pilots will be locally led. They will trial different ways of working that will enable us to focus our thinking and to generate learning with the purpose of developing good practice, enabling change, and increasing the missional impact across the wider landscape. These pilot areas will also be encouraged to consider what additional resources are required at a local level to bring about the desired change. And it's worth noting that any additional resources will come from national funding and not via the parish share scheme. Initially, we anticipate launching 6 pilots. These pilots will be identified through consultation with bishops, archdeacons, and local leaders. And beginning in those places, where there is already evidence of existing leadership capacity to begin this work. And as we develop our thinking and learning, we anticipate establishing a further phase of pilots. So what could this look like?
Thank you, Jonathan. And this is the point where I'm really pleased I haven't got a video in my bit. So pilot missional partnerships will be a designated group of parishes, of schools, of trusts, missional organisations, new worshipping communities, working across a wider geographical landscape, committed to working together around a shared vision for mission, resourced through diverse and courageous ministry teams, which may include children and young people themselves, chaplains, pioneers, youth workers, clergy, lay ministry, school and trust leaders, amongst others. As a result, the missional partnerships will work across traditional boundaries and structures to pioneer new ways of working. Utilising the gifts of all, growing new vocations and meeting the needs of each context, whether coastal, rural, market town, or across a multi-academy trust landscape. Drawing on local expertise and leadership together, the missional partnership will forge new ways of being church and amongst the people, within and amongst the people we are called to serve. And this diagram lays that out for you. To maximise the potential, missional communities will develop a shared understanding of mission that recognises the distinct nature of the local context, a flexible infrastructure to enable and support the effective coordination and delivery of agreed missional priorities, a diverse ministry team led by a dedicated named leader. They may be lay, they may be ordained, who will support and encourage mission and ministry across the pilot partnership. So as an example, and we've been trying very careful not to preempt local context and local decision, but also just to enable your sense of what's being envisaged. An example of a ministry team could be a lead or oversight or focal minister, a growing faith lead, and they may be a chaplain or a youth worker or a different person. An operational lead, for example, for administration or buildings or volunteers or finance. A locally contextualised minister, for example, a pioneer, chaplain, a community missioner. So what might this start to look like? And just to give you a few individual pieces that, if you like, are the building blocks of this range of work. In Larkhill currently, in the work that's already going on, there is a developing focus on the relationship between the church and school, opportunities being forged for families to be supported to spend time together, learning together how to answer children and young people's big questions in a safe environment alongside the exploration of faith. In Sherborne, the local secondary school is working with church and civic trust to develop youth council and establish a young people's friendly town. These are examples of great practice that already exists in our diocese and on which we can all build together. In Bridport, work is developing across churches and schools around spiritual formation, with church, school leaders and volunteers involved together in activities such as walk and talk. In Tidworth, partnerships are growing with the military, schools and church, opening up further new opportunities. And in North Wiltshire, models of school chaplaincy within multi-academy trusts which support the children and families within primary schools are emerging. These are small examples of partnerships that are naturally emerging, and therefore in creating 6 pilot areas, we are looking to expand the horizons of possibility and discover what could really be achieved through developing partnerships and reimagining how we share in mission and ministry together.
Thank you. I think what we're saying is we're wanting to change the culture. Whilst there will be pilot projects, we're wanting to encourage all churches, all schools to think about who they partner for the sake of the kingdom. And this is nothing new. In the New Testament, we read that St. Paul, in his visits around the New Testament churches, encouraged the churches to work in partnership with one another. So the churches in Corinth and the churches in Galatia were called to partner with the church in Jerusalem. So what are the kind of tenets? What are the visible signs of a missional partnership? Well, that's all to work together, to work, to pray, and to serve together, to do the work of the kingdom. And praying comes first and foremost as we set that context in Jesus Christ. There's a commitment to prayer and a commitment to collaborative working across a designated area. There's also a commitment to mixed ecology, to say the traditional church has its place as well as the new thing. So it may well be that the young people want their own congregation, their own church happening in the school, but that's alongside the traditional patterns of worship, which again attract other people. Each missional partnership is committed to the growth of disciples, bringing people on in the faith, that there would be nurture courses, there will be courses to encourage those more mature members of that community to share their faith, to be empowered and to enable making Jesus known. It will be committed to becoming younger and more diverse, working across church, school and households. And it will be committed to simplifying structures to support and enable mission. And I think what we want to say at this juncture when we're talking about partnerships, so often that they can be limited because, oh, they're in a different benefice, or they're in a different deanery, or they're in a different archdeaconry. And what we want to say is that doesn't matter. Partner across, partner with those that you have things in common with, but also, we can get through and around the boundaries. So simplifying structures, but also to think creatively about what resources you have. Everything is better done together because things are richer and therefore are more resourced. They're also committed to sustainability and to collaborative teams of lay and ordained. But there is something there about being sustainable. How can we thrive and how can we be generous in that thriving? And so I think I've looked in the past, we've looked at the present, but how would we like the church to be in the future? And I think we need to hold this in our minds as we think ahead. Some of this people can say it's a bit pie in the sky, but we're saying it's possible and everything is possible under God. And therefore what we want to do is see how partnership grows and God can partner with you and the diocese can, and so we can flourish together. So our reimagining of missional partnerships needs to be inspirational. This is necessary because we feel called at this time to grow a more intergenerational church that represents the communities we serve. We feel called to, at this time, double the number of children and young active disciples, reflecting back at what's happened in our church's connection with children. We want to revitalise the parish system for mission. We want to utilise the resources of our larger and greater churches and make the most of what we have. And make the most of what we have includes our church buildings. We want to support the growth of new Christian communities across homes, across work and education, across social and digital. And I've been talking quite recently about the connections that people can make now with the local church through digital. To develop local leadership that's confident and resourced, to commit to the ongoing and resourcing of leaders. One of the other strands and one of the other webinars will be about leadership, how we grow and resource leaders, about well-being as well as leadership development. And above all, we want to share the good news of Jesus Christ with everyone we meet to make Jesus known.
Thank you, Bishop Karen. And so creative partnerships in local mission, an invitation and an opportunity that requires faithful and courageous discovery and the imagination which celebrates who we are and the journey that we have been on, but also all that is still to come under God's grace and through the power and the leading of the Holy Spirit. creative partnerships in local mission, an opportunity to work creatively across traditional boundaries, pioneering new ways of being, an invitation to nurture and develop a culture of partnership, and out of the partnership, new opportunities for mission and ministry and proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ will emerge. Creative partnerships in local mission, a vehicle and an opportunity to make Jesus known. And so now we're going to move into an opportunity for you to have some conversation. So thank you for listening so patiently, and apologies for those moments when we had problems with the technology. At the moment, we're going to put you into breakout rooms. So you'll go into a room with some other people. If you don't know who's in the room, just spend a moment just introducing yourselves and saying something about the context in which you come from. And what we'd like you to do is to spend probably about 10 minutes looking at these two questions. So where are you currently seeing, experiencing creative partnerships in local mission lived out in your community? And how might creative partnerships in local mission create the environment for the local church and school to make Jesus known? So we invite you to step into that conversation, to bring your current experience. Well, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had good conversations, and recognise again that this is just the beginning of a conversation and just an opportunity to begin to stimulate thought and ideas. And hopefully, as you've heard some of what's already happening in different contexts, there's a real encouragement there around what's already happening in terms of local partnerships. Just a couple of things before we just get some feedback. Just to say that we've posted in the chat a link to a platform called Slack. And this is a space where we can gather further thinking engagement around making Jesus known. So it's an app for your phone. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to register. But when you download it, following the link on the chat, you'll see that there's a page called Making Jesus Known. And that's a place where you can keep visiting to hear more information about what's happening. It's an opportunity for you to continue to engage, to share ideas, resources, thoughts, and ask questions. And we'll be continually monitoring that platform and continue to build relationships with you as you engage in your own local context. Just to say that the next webinar will take place on the 11th of October, Wednesday, the 11th of October, where the theme will be working for justice. And then we'll also circulate the remainder of the dates for the workshop on climate, or championing climate justice and courageous Christian leadership. So do look out for more information about that. But conscious that we want to finish on time, haven't got a chance to listen to feedback from everybody this evening. So again, if there are particular headlines that you would like to share, one, can I encourage you to use the chat function and just type in either questions, comments, reflections, and we will capture those just to make sure that if you feel kind of a burning, oh, I really must let you know about, and we will kind of reflect on those. But we do have the opportunity to hear about 4 voices before we come towards a close. So if there are 4 groups, somebody from a group who feels they'd like to just share something with us, I haven't got the mechanism to see any hands, so I just ask you just to speak into the space. So if somebody would like to go first, that would be lovely.
Just to say that we've talked a lot about partnerships with schools and churches. We partner with other denominations within Calne, and we're doing a messy church which is shared between the Methodists, the Baptists and the Anglicans, and it's in the Methodist church because that's the best building for it. So I think sometimes you were talking about local contextual mission, and I think sometimes working with the other local churches of different denominations can work well.
Absolutely great reflection, Stephen. And where there are other ecumenical partners, you know, why wouldn't we work creatively and missionally? So that's good to hear what's happening in your context. Another voice. Jenny Nelson.
Hi, we talked about schools as well. That was the primary context. But we also saw some frontier points. So, for instance, one member of the group talked about community hubs and after school clubs. Food came into that as a priority and drawing families in as well, which was really helpful. We all talked about a lack of children on Sundays and thinking about that around that in a sort of pioneer way, I suppose. Getting into schools midweek. We talked about Open the Book still being a really exciting thing, actually. But also we talked about pastoral offices and the links to the community there. Had some baptisms and weddings and large numbers of children coming in there, and how do we follow that up? How do we make those occasions exciting to draw families and to think about making Jesus known in that context?
Brilliant. Thank you, Jenny. Really helpful reflection. James, I see you've got your hand up.
Sorry, firstly, I want to apologise. My camera, I keep turning it on, but I don't appear to be on there. So apologies. I was there before, but yeah, I'm not there anymore. Yeah, we just had a discussion. We have a link up with our local church, and we want to develop that. I want to just look at how our approach as a school and the messages we're giving to the children are spreading out into the community as well. And there's an overlap between the church, the local church are trying to do the same, go beyond their walls, and how, where do we cross over? And in reflection, I'm aware that actually there's a lot of stuff that goes on within the school regarding the culture and how we interact with each other via our vision and our values that drives everything that we do. That is about, individuals flourishing, our school flourishing as a community. And that a lot of that sometimes is missed on the parents, or they don't fully understand it. And what they do see often when we link with the church is some of the more significant Christian events, Christmas, Easter, and so they tend to just relate those things with the school as opposed to some of the other approaches to the message we're trying to get across. So how do we just broaden their awareness? How do we communicate more effectively with a link, with the church, with better, more effective relationships?
Brilliant observation, James. Thank you, and really good in this context to hear a school voice and school leader speaking into this conversation and to be able to identify absolutely the opportunities that sit at that interface between church and school. And in Mandy's new role as head of Growing Faith, that is all about the kind of the intersectionality between church, school and household, and indeed community. And I'd encourage you maybe just kind of to link up with Mandy and to be able to begin to explore some of that within your own context. Susanna, I can see your hand is up for our final voice.
No, I was just saying hello, James, because he's in my parish. But also, I think that, for parishes where there is the opportunity for a really fruitful church-school partnership, often it's about timing of things. And in my context, we've now got a head of Christian distinctiveness who's got the oversight of RE and collective worship, is very, very committed to building opportunities for young people within the school to intentional way. So I'm looking for resources to help with that. What may fit best. And doing the creative things, like I've been doing Easter Experience Church for 9 years, and it doesn't necessarily bring children into church on a Sunday, but at least they've experienced something about what the church is. And we try and communicate about that with the parents. But I think James makes a valid point that it's, parents like to send their children to church schools because they have nice values, but actually then how we communicate the root and source of those values is quite a challenge. One thing my schools started doing is putting on the school gate a summary of what the collective worship theme is and how that roots in, how that connects with their school vision and values. Sorry, that's a bit of a long answer, but
no, but important to hear. So thank you very much. And I think I want to acknowledge, obviously, in particular in this last bit, there has been a lot of reference and throughout in terms of the place of our schools. And that because we recognise the diocese that has 193 church schools that serves 43,000 children and young people. There's real missional opportunity there. So the church schools across the diocese serve nearly 50% of the children who go to a school across Dorset and Wiltshire up to the M4 corridor. So it's a real opportunity, but we also recognise that there are other local partners, which might be a hospital, a nursing home, it might be civic trusts and councils, other local charities and organisations. So it's the opportunity and the invitation to be thinking in a broad sense of who are our natural partners and who can we work alongside. Bishop Karen.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think developing leadership skills of young people and utilising them out in the local community where church and young people can meet. So, for example, we were talking about Anna Chaplaincy last night on a seminar. How can we get our young people involved in leading things in the local nursing home, for example? How can we then utilise some of their passions about social advocacy and the environment to then join with the voice of the church in these matters? So I think there is something there about thinking outside the box, which is as well as having them on in a way on our premises, linking about Easter and Christmas. How can we then see the values of some of the wider issues that young people are involved in, and then make Jesus known within them?
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that Donna's just put a comment around it works both ways. Schools can support the message to courageous advocacy for our pupils. And that's absolutely right. And certainly our church schools and those who kind of operating within the SIAMS framework, so the statutory inspection for Anglican and Methodist schools, there will be streams of work around courageous advocacy. And that language of advocacy and justice is absolutely embedded in the heart of our church schools. And it's about opening up the opportunity for those dialogues and those conversations, which aren't, as what Bishop Karen says, not just led by adults, but actually how is that a child and young person-led conversation too. We're going to draw to a close in a moment. And first of all, I'm going to go to Mandy just to ask if there's anything else, Mandy, you'd want to say. Then Bishop Karen, if I could go to you for a final comment and a closing prayer. But for me, can I just say again, once a huge thank you to all of you for giving up this last hour to be part of this webinar. Like I said, it's the beginning of a journey, beginning of a conversation. And if you are able to continue that dialogue through the use of the Slack, which William has just put in the chat again, please do so. But Mandy, any final comments from you?
Really, just to emphasize that relationship between school and church is a mutually beneficial one, and Donna highlighted it, a two-way event. And Rebecca's comment about the Axminster Waffle House is a great example of the sort of thing that is truly possible when church, schools and other local organisations work together. And actually you can go on a recce visit, because that also means you get to test the waffles, which is excellent.
I can second that. Bishop Karen.
We'll let you go out of the diocese to taste the waffles over in Bath Wells. But I think one of the important things is also, like we've began to do this evening, sharing our stories, because what is happening in North Wiltshire may not have been heard of in West Dorset, and vice versa. So I think the comms department are geared up very much in this next stage to just begin the sharing and continue the sharing of stories, and then the networking will then take place, and then partnerships across the diocese hopefully will just grow and flourish. So thank you for coming along, and let's end with a prayer. Gracious God, we thank you that you have called us in partnership with you. Give us wisdom and vision as we move ahead to make Jesus known, for the sake of your kingdom. Amen.